Hola mis amigos, we're making keto, low carb bread.
Today's video is brought to you by thecoolstuff.site. You will be able to find and order all tools and ingredients needed for this recipe right from there, and then join us back here at the video to follow along. Once again, that is thecoolstuff.site, and be sure to check the description box below for a direct link to the ingredients page for this video.
Okay, so let's get right into it. Today's bread recipe is going to sort of be a mashup between the hundreds of different keto bread recipes that I have seen online over the years. And I've sort of taken inspiration from many different ones and kind of made my own changes until I have finally found what I think is the perfect keto bread recipe, because it tastes exactly like regular bread. And I have made this both in the oven and in the bread machine. Today we're going to be using the bread machine, and some of the ingredients are going to be sort of unconventional ingredients, but they are easy to get online, and I will have all of that below for you. So let's go ahead and get started. We're starting off with 1 cup of Vital wheat gluten. And to that, we're going to add a 1/2 cup of oat fiber. And by the way, I am using a bread machine, and your bread maker will most likely tell you that you can just add all of the ingredients in a certain order right into the bread pan. And you can totally do that, but I don't know, I get some sort of satisfaction of mixing it all together in the bowl. I just think it works better for me, but again, you don't have to necessarily do that. So next we're going to be adding 2/3 of a cup of ground flaxseed meal. If you can't get your hands on this, you can also use psyllium husk. It works just the same here. We have a teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of xanthan gum, and 1 tablespoon of erythritol. Now remember, this is not sugar, this is erythritol. It's a sugar alcohol. So many bread makers will tell you not to add your sugars directly to your dry ingredients. We don't have to worry about that here with the erythritol. And if you don't even want the erythritol in there at all, if you don't want that extra sweetness, you do not have to add it in. And also, it does not have to be powdered erythritol. You can just use the granulated, because it doesn't give that sort of cooling effect in this recipe. And we're only adding a tablespoon. Okay, so the dry ingredients are all well combined, so we are all set to start adding things to the bread pan. So we are going to start by adding the liquid in first, per the instructions of my specific bread machine. So here I have 1/2 of a cup of heavy cream, along with 1/2 of a cup of water. Now, I like to start it off with a warm liquid to help get the yeast going. You don't necessarily have to if you're using a bread maker, because it does have a function where it will proof the bread for you and have a nice warmth in there in order for the bread to do its thing with the yeast. However, I kind of like to give it a head start. So what I do is I use the 1/2 cup of the heavy cream straight from the fridge, so that was cold. And then what I did was I had some water in my electric tea kettle, and I put it on the lowest setting that this one can go, which is 175 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I added that 1/2 of a cup of warm water into this cup, and then that made it just a nice lukewarm temperature. Next, we're going to be adding in 2 eggs directly into our bread pan. And I just realized that I forgot to beat the eggs. So you want to have 2 beaten eggs that you're adding into the mixture. So I'm just taking care of that really quickly right now. I'm sure the bread machine can handle it on its own, but I'm just gonna go ahead and follow the instructions for adding eggs to this specific machine. And now we are ready to gently add in all of our dry ingredients right on top of the liquid. Next, what I've done here is I've just made a little bit of a well so that we can add our yeast. You just want to make sure that you don't go down into the liquid. You just want to have a nice little spot for your yeast to sit. And now, following the instructions for my bread maker, you are supposed to add your sugars around the edge of the bread pan. So today we are going to be using 1 teaspoon of honey, which I am just going to drizzle around the edges here. And this is just to feed the yeast. So I'm not using any magical special honey or anything like that because that's going to be consumed by the yeast, so it really doesn't matter anyway. And lastly, we are going to be adding in our yeast. This is the one that I am using. It is a bread machine instant yeast, but I also use this as well when I make this recipe in the oven. It doesn't necessarily have to be the one for a bread machine. So what I do with this is I also store this in the fridge to keep it nice and active for us. So what I'm going to do is just add 1 tablespoon of our yeast right into the designated well that we've set up for it. And that is it. We are good to add this into our bread machine. So let me go ahead and bring that over to you and we will be back. Okay, so I have my bread machine here. So we are all ready to start making the bread. So I'm just going to add very carefully the bread pan in. And the way mine works is you lock it by giving it a little twist clockwise, and that is locked in. And we're just going to close the lid and set it up to start baking. So what I'm going to be doing for my machine is the first thing we do here is we select which type of bread we are making. My bread machine does have a sugar-free option. I have not tried it yet, but I find that the multigrain option is what works best for me. One day I will try the sugar-free, but I don't want to risk making any changes right now. So we're going to be choosing number 8 for my machine. And this specific bread is going to be a 2-pound loaf. So for me, I will be choosing the 1,000 gram option. And last but not least, we're going to be selecting our color. And I do apologize if you can't see the screen, but it's basically everything that I'm telling you that I'm pressing here. So last but not least, we have the option of light, medium, and dark. I like to work on medium, so that is where I'm going to leave it. So at this point, we are all set to bake. So according to my bread machine, I will have fresh bread in 3 hours and 14 minutes. So let's go ahead and give it a go. I'm sure that inquiring minds want to know what it looks like in here. So here we can see that right now it is starting the mixing process, and then it is going to knead for a while and let it sit and proof and start baking. So I will see you when we have fresh bread. We are now back, and now we have a loaf of bread. Now I know that this one looks a little funky on the top, but that's just the way that it happened to bake up. But I have made plenty loaves and they do come out nice and pretty. I am going to go ahead and make another loaf using the same recipe right after this one, and then hopefully that one will come out looking a little prettier, and then I will show you pictures of that one as well. But in any event, this does make a nice and tall loaf, as you can see, so it's perfect for sandwich bread. So let's go ahead and see what we have. Now remember, the dough hook is still in the bread, so typically what we have to do is just kind of turn it over and give the bottom a little wiggle to release it. And there it is. It just released. And there we have a very tall and nice loaf. And don't forget to remove the dough hook from the bottom because it may still be in there. This time around it's not in there. I think it's still, oh, it actually stuck in here. This is the first time that the dough hook stayed in, but typically the dough hook does end up still in the bread and you need to fish it out. So just keep that in mind. I just remembered I do have a little bit of a leftover loaf that I made previously, just so that I can show you here. This is what was left over, but as you can see, it did make a nice and prettier loaf here on top. So results may vary, it's just the way that it bakes, but it all tastes the same and it's all great. And here you can look at the texture of the bread. It's just like regular sandwich bread that you could buy. And also, of course, that's not low carb, but this is absolutely amazing. It's not eggy. I can't stand an eggy keto recipe. Most of the breads and lots of other recipes use a lot of eggs in order to get that lifting power, but you end up with a very eggy product, and that's not for me. This bread is not that, so definitely give this a shot, because I promise you, you will absolutely love this bread. I love having sandwiches with this, and I don't even realize it while I'm eating it. I forget that it's actually a keto bread. And also it does toast up really well. I am going to do a video in the future of toasting this up, so definitely stay tuned for that. I've just given this a slice so that you can see what the bread looks like. It's the same thing as the other loaf that I just showed you, but I wanted to slice this one just so you can see that it is indeed identical. Nice sandwich bread, nice and stretchy, gives you that same dough-like feel as if you were not using low carb products. And you see I'm really tugging at this and it is not breaking too easily. It's nice and sturdy, so you can put all of your condiments. You can do everything that you would do with a regular bread. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a little rip here so you can see how it breaks. That is just like any other bread. Definitely give this a shot. Keto bread. Enjoy, and I'll see you at the dinner table.